Okay, thank you very much. We're very, very happy and proud to be invited by TEDx. And we thank the whole organizing team, Jay, Pramesh, and everybody else for giving us this platform. It's really good for us to be able to reach out, and talk about type of things we're doing. Yeah, so we'll focus on our work in Dharavi, although we work also in different places. In different places in Mumbai, in Goa, and we've also been working in Tokyo, and we're soon going to be doing a workshop in Istanbul. So but we'll focus on, because I think this is a very urgent, also important question that doesn't necessarily have the a chance of being talked about in a different perspective. Um, so first of all, just to give you, like a bit a glimpse, story of the way certain the urban evolution is being perceived right now in this kind of academic mainstream, but also by urban planners and also general public. Planet to Slum is the title of a book written by Mike Davis, which depicts a very, very dark future for our cities, which is extremely divided between, on one hand, slums, chaotic, breeding terrorism and all that, all types of criminality, and on the other side of the story, this formal city, which is also very much policed and controlled, and the Orwellian landscape of those new cities which are all centered about around surveillance. And so what we want to do is talk briefly about that vision, and where we're actually heading now, and also talk about what we think we should maybe like it's something we should rethink conceptually, and means of intervention that could maybe change this type of future.
And we have our mascot for this presentation is the alien from District 9. If those of you have seen that, a lot of us feel alienated. We are aliens sometimes in our own city, and that for us is a very important trope to understand a lot of what we're going to say.
Okay. No, the typical answer to the slums is in terms of redevelopment, and that has been happening all over the world. And the redevelopment is always usually in a high rise, because there's a sense of we want to accommodate high density, and so the idea is the only way to do this is to create high rise, and this is like very much a global typology. So this is the highest social housing being was built in Singapore. This is in New York City, Brooklyn. This is Mumbai. This is Paris, La Courneuve, and this is Shenzhen, just next to Shanghai. This is a type of landscape which we very see emerging all over the place. And we briefly want to give you a little scenario of a potential like what maybe is developing in a city like Mumbai very fast. Let's say like our alien. It can be either very well off, and he'd live in a place like Godrej Tower, and or maybe he's middle class and he's barely making it. He's on Mira Road, and he's struggling not to be in a slum, and gets by, or he can be poor and he's been rehabilitated in a new slum rehabilitation authority building, which is the third case scenario. Either way, they're going to have to commute to work. This is like an example of the segregated zone city that we're actually creating for ourselves, which often passes off for being this world city, this world-class city that is being sold out to us, often by the government or real estate developers. He'll have to commute to work. If he's well off, he'll take his car. And the city is increasingly being designed to accommodate this type of transportation, private transportation, and also the whole street activity, which is one of the most amazing thing about Mumbai, disappears in this case. It's happening very fast. Or he's poor, he's taking the train, and then he goes to work, or he can go to entertainment like play, or he can go shopping. And all these activities are being segregated, they're being zoned. And that's a typical pattern in which urban planners are thinking. And this is an old school pattern. That's what has been happening. It's kind of like an industrial model of urban development. But this is what is proposed to Mumbai cars today, and all over India and all over Asia. I mean, it's not just Mumbai. I mean, this is a global phenomenon.
It's a very taken for granted logic when we talk about going vertical, because you think that you can absorb more people. But this also shows that ultimately space gets organized in very different ways. So you grow vertical, you absorb people, but that does not mean that land is released in the same way following that logic. Land is needed for wider roads because cars become, greater, are consumed a lot, are used a lot. You need more shopping malls. So it's not as if the logic of verticality is so straightforward.
And what interests us the most is this third scenario in which which is the type of slum rehabilitation. So we really want to focus on what's happening when we're redeveloping slums, and that's one example of a building which was built 7 years ago, and in Dharavi under the slum rehabilitation scheme. And this is typically, some of the things that happen in buildings which are built very poorly and cheaply and very fast, and not necessarily with bad intention. It's not that every SRA building is, built with bad intent by real estate developers. This is built by NGO, but leakages typically happen. No money for maintenance. Oops, sorry. Okay, that's the slide. But this is and typically also a waste of space around the buildings. So in the name of high density, we're also leaving a lot of space around the buildings. It's not a clear cut. It's not because you go high rise that you necessarily achieve higher density. So that's often being sold as an argument for high rise. So if we go a bit deeper into let's say Dharavi right now, and starting with popular culture, with a well-known movie that really made out on top of the charts, which is Slumdog Millionaire, which is a way in which a lot of people got introduced to Dharavi. So of course we added this our alien over here, which is a dog, and there was a lot of controversy around this. People, we read in the news a lot of people saying, we're not dogs. This movie is offensive because we're being treated as dogs. And it's that but actually, we thought talking with different people in Dharavi with good friends, and we've been working with, we got also another story which is slightly more complex and interesting. Is the idea that we're not slum, and this is Manju Kenny in her neighborhood of Koliwada in Dharavi, and this is a neighborhood which has been now is increasingly being, and this is our alien for this image.
That's Noam.
Yeah,
Matias' son.
So he's wondering, is actually asking himself, why is this place being called a slum? It looks like a village, like a European village, and that's what many European visitors have been saying. We had some people from Italy, students from Italy, coming and working with us for some time, and they loved it. They said, "Oh, this looks exactly like Florence and some little neighborhoods. Like why? This is the slums. This is like And of course, this is a very special part of Dharavi. Koliwada is, of course, a very old village.
It's a 400-year-old village, like the Koli community in Mumbai, who are the original sort of Mumbaikars following the particular logic. And Koliwada, like many villages in Mumbai, became anachronistic, to the logic of Mumbai as an urban space, which defined urbanism in a very narrow way. So when you go close to Koliwada, you actually start seeing the village-like typology. So a lot of people, a lot of architects who worked, as Matias said, kept pointing out that please recognize and distinguish different kinds of habitats. The word slum is too generic, is too general. There are different kinds of habitats, and that became a very important part of our argument.
So we feel, maybe while we are, redeveloping, redeveloping. I mean, what are we redeveloping? So we should maybe know, what we are redeveloping before we do it. So this is happening very fast. This is the new landscape, and of course the Dharavi redevelopment project is a massive project going on now that many of you may be aware of, which is basically selling. The government is selling the land of Dharavi, selling that everybody in Dharavi is squatter, even though the land is historically was marshland, and people moved in and created the land almost themselves on marshland, and they all being like not necessarily, like some of them will be rehabilitated, but according to some estimates, only maximum 25 to 30% of the people actually living now in Dharavi will be entitled to have a new place in Dharavi, and this place will be a typical high-rise, SRA building. And so what is there now? What is being redeveloped? That's, I think, something that we don't know enough about.
And what we, in fact, through our own research and our own activism, we found out that, land in Dharavi is used in a very special way. So we've recently written a paper for a book which is called On Speculation and Intensive Uses of Land. So everybody makes money out of land and property, right? I mean, Bombay is known for that. In fact, its entire landscape has been created through speculation in many ways. But there are also other ways of using and creating value out of land. So when a lot of people who don't have resources, when they find spots of land, and remember a lot of people in Dharavi, occupied Dharavi when it was not even officially land. It was really marshland which was built over, and the government had its own very grey approach towards it, and people began to use it in complex ways. So what we found is that a simple structure could be used in different ways. And the next slide will in fact show us that in a greater detail. We found that the typology and the topography of Dharavi is essentially shaped by the structure of the tool house. The tool house is essentially a place which is used for staying, living, sleeping, working, storing. It's a warehouse, as well as it's a place where people live. And that is the sort of messy structure of Dharavi. What looks messy from outside has an internal logic to it. And it was possible for the tool house to emerge because tool houses are not just purely found in places like Dharavi. Many rural areas, in fact, rural areas prior to the Industrial Revolution were sites of production, and sites of production was often the home. So for a lot of people for whom resources are difficult and scarce, the home itself becomes a huge source of wealth. And you multiply that, and that is how you actually see Dharavi's physical form. You also see it in terms of its economic value. That's how economic value was generated. It's very important and interesting for us to understand and value this.
And also what we found important in this case is that when you destroy one type of typology which is there now, which is the mixed use, unzoned type of settlements and habitat, and you replace it by highly segregated spaces with housing on one side and maybe work on the other side, you change completely also the whole economy of the place. And this is something that there's a huge loss there that we need to really understand, because it has huge consequences not just for the people in Dharavi but for the whole city of Mumbai. And those people are going to become either commuters or new slum dwellers in some other parts of the city if they're unlucky and they cannot stay there. So what do we do to the city when we displace anything between 5 lakhs and 1 million people? So try to think about, is this a special Indian thing, that there's like tool house, or is it something which happens in different contexts in different places? And is there any model that we can refer to say actually this can produce successful cities? And can this be another alternative model to the straight up clearing and redeveloping? And this brought us all the way back to post-war Tokyo. We thought that was a good example because Tokyo was completely flattened after the war, the Pacific War, and it was completely rebuilt from scratch. And after the war, it looked basically like a big slum. People were just building, and the government didn't have the money to provide housing for everybody. So they focused on infrastructure and industries, which they really tried to help develop, and they had some types of financial mechanisms to help people also build their own house, or meaning that they can also contract someone to build the house. But basically it's like done at the local level. So that's what happened. We see here the street market, Dharavi type street markets all over the place. I mean, when I say Dharavi, is all over Mumbai, also on India. It's not just recycling activities, building of houses, and the tool house. I mean, which is an old kind of like artisanal form also, which has happened for a long time. It's like it's a very typical way of organizing life in urban settings, in not just in Asia but even also in Europe, pre industrial revolution.
And in many ways, in fact, a lot of economic historians will talk about Japan and how Japanese success, which has been documented in terms of its management strategies and the way its corporate organized itself. There's also the story in which it depended a lot on decentralized production practices in neighborhoods, which will remind you in many ways of Dharavi. And there are a lot of studies which we will talk about it.
And by the way, that's our alien of the slide. He's not the original picture. And what do we see today? I mean, what is today's Tokyo? And today's Tokyo is the biggest city in the world. It's one city which has extremely high level of living standards, and which is also extremely efficiently organized in many different ways, even though it looks very chaotic to the casual observer coming and visiting the city for the first time. And it still has, which is quite amazing for a city from advanced economy, an extremely vibrant local life, also local economic life. The shops are to be found everywhere, in every neighborhood. As soon as you step out of the core city center, you'll see almost like village looking like neighborhoods all over the place. High density, so it's comparable to Mumbai. And lots of structures today in today's Tokyo would be corrugated sheet. You will be able to buy wood in your neighborhood and fix up your deck or something like this. So this is actually happening. This incremental development is not something which is just like a romantic idea. Maybe the romantic idea is to think that we can accommodate, the migratory flux in Mumbai in all high-rise buildings. Maybe that's what's really romantic.
And also in Japan, not only Tokyo, you could see Osaka. First time, in fact, when I landed in Osaka, I was struck by from a distance what seemed to be a landscape which is very familiar to me flying down into Bombay. And then you come closer, you realize that no, these are very futuristic, very high-tech spaces, but there is something about the typology which informs our understanding of urbanism, or should inform our understanding of urbanism.
And another thing that we see, not just in Tokyo, but in many cities today, is again the live and work space. Again the tool house, but in a new format. The place of the creative, the creative class. It could be, some web designer. It could be some artist. It could be some musician. It could be anybody who's working on a computer. It could be a consultant, who's living and working in the same space. So maybe that mixed use live and work condition in Dharavi is not backward. Maybe it's actually that the way cities are being structured today. The loft, the artist loft in Brooklyn is nothing else than another version of the tool house.
Yeah. And Japan, unlike many other Asian countries, because it was not colonized, it was in fact a colonizer. It was not burdened by many categories. So the zoning, strict division of spaces, what is urban, what is rural, it was not at all bothered by those categories. So ultimately, a lot of urbanization which took place in Japan, which appears to a lot of urbanists as very messy. In fact, today, a lot of people are talking about the slumming of Tokyo, and we look at all those neighborhoods as something which need to be transformed. So these are things which help us to recast our own understanding of Dharavi as well.
And I just want to ask you a little exercise. This photo. What do you think this is? This is Mumbai or Tokyo or some other city? Mumbai? Could be Bangkok. This is Dharavi and this is Tokyo. It's just like put together.
They photoshopped it.
So, and many cities have the same, typology. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the typology of the incrementally developing city. So it can produce perfectly acceptable places for middle class as well. I mean, it's not gonna that you're gonna have slums in your city forever. Those places, if you allow them, and if you work within it, they can become extremely nice cities, which also solve some of the problems that we're facing today. This idea of traffic congestion. And now if you look at what is the kind of cutting edge urban planning in Europe, they're trying to find ways in which traffic can be reduced by having more proximity between working and living. And this is some of the things that are here in Mumbai but are being destroyed today, which is very sad. So this is something to keep in mind also when we think about the city. And this is just some of our activities that we want to talk about a little bit.
So we have been working in Dharavi for a long time. In fact, before Slumdog Millionaire, so we had to answer a lot of questions to our friends in Dharavi that, what is this? We were the sort of people who represented that kind of an idea. And so we had to deconstruct that. And we began doing a lot of work in Dharavi. There's dharavi.org, the website, which is a sort of one-stop shop for anything, any material and reference on Dharavi.
It's a wiki, so anybody can contribute.
Exactly. We have a place called The Shelter, which we have recently sort of got into a partnership with a local resident. A lot of our work is part of a very large team of people. We have, Nishit Shah, who helps us with the online. Only 1 minute already? Oh.
Yeah, that's okay.
And we have, so we have a lot of young interns. We had Dipti, we have George, who've been helping us with all the work. You see Bappi Lahiri, because we had an event with him a couple of years ago. That's the alien for this picture.
And this is our office in Dharavi. And actually, the Bappi Lahiri story is this guy is Paul Devro from a label in Philadelphia called Mad Descent. And he came down a workshop that we organized in Koliwada. 1 week workshop with 50 local residents and 50 people from all over the place. And we were there for a week and brainstorm about the potential future of Koliwada. And he's a big fan of Bappi Lahiri. So somehow they connected and they decided a musical project in Dharavi. And at the end of this workshop, we had a big party here in Blue Frog, and we generously invited to come hundreds of us. Lots of of us had never been, of course, in a place like Blue Frog, and it was really nice.
Yeah, it's a great thing, we.
Yeah.
Blue Frog leapt high as a press report talked that evening, because we had we had people coming from Dharavi. We had lots of mixing of crowds. We had, for the first time in Mumbai, I saw a place like this opened its space up, which is very different from what we experienced yesterday. Dharavi is a very important space also in many other ways, which we won't go into detail right now. But the fact is that we are talking about a social space, a social history, where people are uncomfortable with things like reservations, all kinds of discussions about caste histories, etc. Here we have an example of people who make it with zero capital, right? They create space and value with nothing, and the city does not embrace this process and does not recognize it. Something for us to think about.
Yeah, and just to mention that this is our office in Dharavi. We started Herbs about 2 years ago with Gita Mehta, who's an urban designer based in New York. So since then we had lots of studios, students coming from Columbia University, students coming from Germany, and we're basically trying to provide support for what is already happening. So we think that that's the best way, because we think that the expertise is in the neighborhood already. So we just need to match it with expertise from outside. So global local expertise can make very interesting new projects and new visions for the place. And we just want to conclude this by showing the website that you can refer to. These all our activities are listed there, herbs.net. And this is the next big event that we're doing in Istanbul. This is a workshop that you're all invited to participate in, and we'll also have other events in Mumbai soon. So thank you very much.